off your hat in my presence?
Sorry, sir.
The prisoner is made to relive his childhood.
Take! Confidential! Secret!
You're scared.
No!
Well, take it.
Fool!
Such business is above the law.
Above the law!
Above the law, yes.
Tell me!
Never.
You're guilty! No!
Another exciting adventure of Patrick McGoohan in The Prisoner.
Champ, boy. You can do it all, boy. You're the one-man band. You won't step over the threshold because you're scared. Go on. Kill. Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling. We want information. 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 What do you want? Information. What do you want? What do you want? Information. What do you want? Whose side are you on? What do you want? Information. What do you want? Information.
Now that I'm 6, I'm clever as clever. I think I shall be 6, forever and ever. That's a quote from A.A. Milne, author of the Winnie the Pooh book, and it seems quite appropriate for the prisoner, doesn't it? Will he ever escape? Or will he be 6, forever and ever? In tonight's episode, Once Upon a Time, the prisoner faces the toughest battle he's yet fought, as number 2 attempts to discover the source of his rebellious attitude in order to reshape his entire personality to fit the philosophy of the village. Here we finally get some answers to questions raised throughout the series. We learn, for instance, why our hero resigned. Not the specifics, but the emotional reasons. And for those of you interested in the identity of the prisoner, listen carefully to number 2's line in the school days segment, which begins, "Report to my office in the morning." I'll be back after the episode with some more comments about the series and its role as modern-day mythology. I'm Scott Appel, the new number 2. Now, where was I? Oh yes, once upon a time...
Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling. We want information. 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 You won't get it. By hook or by crook. We will. Who are you? The new number 2. Who is number 1? You are number 6. I am not a number. I am a free man.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of Once Upon a Village, a prisoner podcast. I'm your number 2 here, John S. Drew, and we're coming to the end here, and we're going to do this a little differently because, as we'll explain in a moment, there's been some unusual things going on with the making of this episode. And, of course, when I say we have our own number 6 here, trapped as he feels in this never-ending saga of this podcast here, Mr. Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Trapped in a world I never made.
That's right. And in particular, this episode, which is a long time coming out here, and that's because we'd originally recorded these two parts, and somehow or another, I don't know if it's in the transferring from one computer to the other, I lost part one, which is Once Upon a Time. I do have Fallout. We're all good to go there. So what I decided to do was, rather than sit there and try and re-record an entire episode for Once Upon a Time, I've asked Jim to come back here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do Once Upon a Time, but we're going to roll right into Fallout from there.
Yeah, and that's good because there's not a whole lot to talk about with Once Upon a Time. And I still feel the same from when we recorded the first time for it.
Well, let me give you the quick background here. Once Upon a Time aired in the UK January 25th, 1968. In the United States, September 14th, 1968. Now, I know what you're saying about not having much to say here about it. I'm going to say this much. The beginning is good.
Yeah.
You know?
And I remember saying that before. For me, it's a good beginning, and it's a pretty good ending, and everything else in the middle, it literally puts me to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember this very well, and I remember saying it very well. I rewatched it just a day ago. But when I rewatched it to when we first recorded for this, and then it got lost, I remember telling you I fell asleep in the middle of it. Well,
Yeah.
It's something about this episode. It happened again. I fell asleep during the middle of it.
Maybe it's just very hypnotic, like number 2 was hoping it would be for number 6.
Is that what it is? Okay. Yeah, it's hypnotic.
Because first of all, we got Leo McGoohan back, and we don't see this very often because our number 2s are usually quite subservient with the higher ups. He's angry.
You can say what you like. You brought me back here. I told you the last time you were using the wrong approach. I do it my way, or you find somebody else. Leave the coffee. The coffee, leave it! How many times do I have to ask?
He's angry with them. He's angry with the whole system. He's angry that they've not let him play out the scenario the way he really felt it should have been played out to break the prisoner.
Yeah. Help me to remember. I think I've always been a little confused about the this and that about this episode. This was actually filmed earlier in production.
Yes. Yes, my understanding was this was actually supposed to be the finale, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so that's what I'm a little confused about. They filmed it as the finale and then intended to hold it until the end of the show, even though it was filmed earlier?
Well, because they kind of knew this was the point they wanted to get to.
That's what I mean. Okay, so it wasn't intended to be shown earlier in the show.
No.
It was intended to be held. That is very interesting. That's a very interesting way to do it. And if this was the end, then that's a very interesting ending. And you know what? I almost would have preferred maybe that this be the ending rather than Fallout.
Well, see, that's the thing. My understanding was this wasn't the ending, but the season finale. The idea being that they wanted more, but McGoohan was like, no,
right.
wait a minute. No. This was meant to be, or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe McGoohan set it up as the season finale, and then the networks were like, yeah, this isn't working. You need to wrap this up somehow. Thus comes Fallout.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, McGoohan wrote and directed this one.
Yep.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it at all. It's just, I don't know. It literally could have been condensed into a half-hour episode or even less. It's just all of the... Once they get in the room, it just all goes to nothing as far as I'm concerned.
Well, sure. No, the whole room thing is just this series of, vignettes that are supposed to,
And that's you know what? And that's exactly right. And none of them really, to me, really matter. It's just kind of, boy, I'm trying to think of, I almost said it's just a bunch of silliness, and it is. It's pretentious. I mean, it is, again, I think I said this when we recorded before about it, is that it's like a product of its time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a two-man play, an avant-garde two-man play that somebody thought was really cool, and it just doesn't age well at all. You said it well. The beginning is good. I like the setup. I like that our Leo McGoohan number 2 is back, and that he has been, basically told to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And he turns around and he says, "Okay, I want degree absolute."
Yes.
And it's a good delivery on that we get the sense that, okay, wow, that's like extreme. 2 men enter, one man leaves.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because he says, like, how much time does he get or something like that, and he's told 1 week, and he says that's not nearly enough.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He's got to do this thing within 1 week, which is weird because you think, like, wow, 1 week, that's a long time.
Mm-hmm. He has to do this where he's using a process based on the idea of Shakespeare's 7 ages of man, as 2 explains.
Yeah.
So you're going through all the ages from the beginning to. So how can you do all that kind of therapy in a week to break a man?
Sure. But again, you said vignettes, and I will agree with that. It just, to me, it just really falls apart. It gets pretty boring, and but I like the end, and I would have been happy if it would have ended the series like that, because then that would have been the question of, oh my goodness, he's going to see number 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but we don't get, rather than the utter and inanities of Fallout at the end.
Well, it makes you wonder if that is supposed to be the season finale. Where do you go for? Because if you just say you're going to go see number 1, and let's say there was a season 2, you can't simply just reset, because that would be the ultimate heartbreak there. That would be just, you've gone too far. So I don't know what the thinking was by either the network or by McGoohan in initially setting up a finale like that.
Well, you could literally have had an all new show in a way. It could have literally left the village behind. Number 6 is introduced to number 1 and the level that number 1 is on, and McGoohan then steps into a different world. He stepped into the village, which was a completely different world, and a season plays out where he's trying to get out of there, and then he wins his freedom in a way, and the whole, if there was going to be a next season, it could have literally been the world of the movers and shakers that run the village, and number 6's insertion into that world and the games that he has to play to maybe destroy from the inside of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see what could have happened. Mm-hmm. I think I read, like, it was supposed to be 2 13-episode blocks, maybe.
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
I think that's what I read, which would have equaled 26 episodes, which generally TV shows back in those days were like 24 to 26 episodes.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, though. What did you think of the bit? Because, like we said, the vignettes, each one of them scenarios that in some way is supposed to get him to reveal why he left or who he's working for, like those kind. And he's always like, I don't snitch, I don't do this, whether it's as a little kid or when he's being stopped for a traffic thing while they're playing with cars around the room. But eventually the butler plays into this too, and becomes subservient to the prisoner.
Yeah, and I know I said it was like a 2-man play when really I suppose it could be described as a 3-man play.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said long ago, John, that it would have been very interesting if Angelo turned out to be number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it would be like when the king disguises himself as a commoner and goes amongst his people.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been very interesting if McGoohan says, I want number one, and if the controller just pointed then to the butler and said, well, there he is, and just end it right there.
Right.
So you assume that number two, when he's on the phone, he's talking directly to number one?
If not number one, at least certainly someone above him that he can speak so. I mean, he has like almost like a what have I got to lose sort of attitude. I mean, he's been given this second chance to come back for one thing, which is something we haven't seen with any of the number twos.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. He leaves in his original episode, right? He leaves at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But does he leave in shame, or I can't remember?
I don't. You know what? It's been too long. You're right. I don't remember if he did leave in shame, and if this was a case of my one chance to redeem. But again, okay, even if that's the case, I could see him even pleading in desperation. He's angry. That's the thing that makes him stand out from the other number twos. We never see them, they're swarmy, they are begging, they are, conniving, they are, but or they're like right with the plans, the bootlickers, but they're not angry, and that makes him stand out in terms of the number two. And I got to say, that's why I like that whole beginning there with him.
Well, and it's not only that he's angry. It is that he is able to speak that way, and because if it's not necessarily number one, it's his superiors. But if you're number two, one assumes that there's nobody above you but number one. But anyways, he's not talking like the other number twos do to number one. He's almost speaking as an equal.
Right.
Because like, as you say, he's angry that, it's interesting that he's getting away with talking the way he is, kind of in an almost, a disrespectful sort of way. I want to do this my way, and, you're going to let me do it my way. And all of that, and I want degree absolute. I did also read that was the working title for this episode, and I wish it would have been called degree absolute, but because that's a really cool term.
Now, okay, let me ask you this before we move into the other parts. You mentioned this could have been a half hour. What if this and Fallout eventually had just been combined into one episode, whether it was an hour or whether even if it was like an hour and a half?
I think I remember you bringing that up before. I think that, because they could have just trimmed away a lot of stuff that just is just dumb or
from both parts.
Yeah, it's a shame that this show, which is a favorite of mine, very beloved to me, ends in this way, and that's got a lot to do with people involved in the show not being happy that they had to end it when they did or whatever. So in a way, I guess it's kind of a revenge on their superiors. So I guess you could say that McGoohan or number two is like McGoohan being told to do this thing to end it, and then number two, slash McGoohan says, well, I'm going to do it, is angry and says, I'm going to do it in my own way.
Well, I think we mentioned, and again, I know we're going to, because I'll have to trim out some of that, I guess, but I think we did actually say that in the second part, and something to the effect also that, because we also noted it, McGoohan barely talks in the last part.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Thank you. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge thing that's missing here, is the repartee between number 6 and number 2, whoever number 2 would be. That's one of the parts of the show that I really love, is the witty banter, the verbal fencing that goes on in the show. And we don't have that. And when you have somebody the caliber of Leo McKern,
Mm-hmm.
and then you tell McGoohan to basically be quiet. I mean, he's telling him, I mean, he did it to himself. You know, he wrote this thing. But yeah, we're kind of robbed of that. And you know what? I mean, Leo McKern is Leo McKern, and he's great and all of that. But, you know, what could it have been if it was way more with McGoohan's participation?
Right. Okay, so let me ask you this. Any other last thoughts before we move on to Fallout?
No. I'm sure there's people that, you know, disagree with us and just love this one, but I'm not one of them. I was also refreshing my memory that they said that supposedly the shooting this thing was so intense that Leo McKern had like either a breakdown or like a heart attack.
Yes.
Or something, and I'm just not seeing it. I'll leave it with this. It didn't age well. Maybe at that time it was all kind of, I don't want to say psychedelic, but you know, funky and pretentious and considered to be, you know, cool at that point. But it doesn't age very well. It we could almost skip over it, or just skip over the whole middle part of it.
Well, I think it's really interesting to note, and my last thought on this here, because you say, you know, Leo McKern having the breakdown and it not aging well and all that, and I agree with you. I don't think it does age well, but it's interesting to note that the ending of this is supposed to be on this intellectual plane, a battle of wits type thing. We don't get anything in the way of, like we always got at least once in an episode, the fisticuffs. But what happens for the Fallout episode, it kind of devolves very quickly into just, you know, here's James Bond and we've got the lighthouse and all this other stuff. It becomes exactly what probably McGoohan was like, here, this is what you wanted. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, so it'll be interesting. I have not listened to our commentary, so I'll be editing this here now. But Jim, thank you for this. I mean, I'm going to be thanking you again at the end of this with part 2. But folks, stay tuned. What we're going to do is we're going to take a little break here. When we come back, Jim and I will be back with Fallout.
There's a concept in psychiatry known as transference, where basically the patient uses the doctor's strength as a crutch until he's back on solid ground. There is also, however, a thing called countertransference, where the doctor can become infected by the problems of the patient. This can happen when the strength of the patient's will overpowers that of the doctor, and you've just witnessed a perfect example of this in Once Upon a Time. In his attempt to isolate and harness the prisoner's rebellious nature, Number 2 fell victim to the very same trait within himself. Yes, this Number 2 is indeed a rebel. We see it in his attitude towards Number 1 at the very opening. And he instinctively knows the right question to ask a fellow rebel. Not, why did you resign, but, why do you care? He is, however, a failed rebel. He's too self-centered to care for anyone but himself. And when Number 6 gains control and offers Number 2 his freedom, Number 2 breaks down and hides. He is afraid of that freedom and the responsibilities that would come with it. Small wonder he fought so hard to suppress it. Here the prisoner has won his ultimate victory over Number 2. They have changed places. The prisoner fully realizes this. He knows he wouldn't kill, so he feels safe in handing the new Number 2. Number 6? A knife. Even the butler recognizes that the transference is complete and absolute. The problem we have with an episode like this is how we can possibly fully analyze it in what little time we have here tonight. So instead, let's concentrate on one aspect of the series which indicates its mythic nature, the hero's journey. In his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, the eminent scholar of mythology Joseph Campbell outlines the basic pattern underlying all mythic tales of this type. A man leaves his home, travels to a strange and wondrous land, fights and conquers bizarre monsters, wins a valuable prize, and then returns home to relate his journey. The tales of Ulysses, Jason, and Sinbad are just a few of these immortal travelers. And so, of course, is The Prisoner. Here we've seen a man kidnapped from his London home and taken to the village to battle against its warped microcosm of society. But what is the valuable prize he could win? And will he ever escape once and for all to return home to tell his tale? To answer these questions, we need to use a 20th century interpretation of mythology, that of the famous Swiss psychologist Dr. Carl Jung. Jung saw in mythology a reflection of the deep inner activities of the mind, and saw this hero's journey as a symbolic roadmap of the search for psychological wholeness, which he called individuation. The final 4 episodes of The Prisoner paint a vivid portrait of this process of individuation. In Hammer into Anvil, the prisoner confronts the dark side of his own nature, which Jung called the shadow, as represented by the sadistic paranoid number 2. As a spy, these are psychological characteristics to which the prisoner could easily have succumbed. But instead, he faces and comes to terms with them, and in doing so, becomes immune to them. In The Girl Who Was Death, he faces the next deeper level of psychological strata, his own inner feminine nature, the dark side of his anima, that fascination with death, which perhaps guided him into the excitement of spying in the first place. Here again, we see him unaffected by death's flirtations. He conquers and integrates even that. And now, in Once Upon a Time, he has faced himself, his whole psychological history, and once again emerges the victor. He stands at the very brink of psychological wholeness. But there is still one battle to be fought. He must now pass through the deepest level of the mind, the archetypes of the collective unconscious, the symbolic representations of basic patterns of human action. In next week's episode, Fallout, we see this mental depth symbolized as a physical descent into caverns far beneath the village. And this collective unconscious, where we are all joined together, is symbolized as a grotesque tribunal assembled to judge him. Here then he must confront the very archetypal basis of the society which plagued him in the village. And in this deepest level of the mind, there is still one more foe to be faced, the mysterious source of all his suffering, the elusive and mythical number 1. Is the prisoner enough of an individual to withstand this final temptation to conform? Will he escape to finish his mythic journey, closing the circle of his experience? You'll find the answers to these questions and many more in next week's allegorical finale, Fallout. Be seeing you then.
The final desperate adventure of the prisoner, when he gets a strange reward for being rebellious and an opportunity to meet number 1 in Fallout.
Key to your house. Traveler's checks, passport. You are free to go.
I feel violation of the power. Nevertheless, did you ever meet him? Did you ever meet number 1?
Meet him!
Zicko, crack down, dry bones, zicko, crack down, dry bones, zicko, crack down, dry bones down here, the word of the Lord.
The prisoner learns what happens to all failures and creates havoc in Fallout. Don't miss the end of this exciting series. See the final episode of The Prisoner on this channel.
Hi, I'm Scott Appel, your host for this, the final episode of The Prisoner. Tonight we finally get some answers to the multitude of questions the series has raised over the previous 16 weeks, although they may not be exactly the answers you've been expecting. Let's see everyone at attention and fall out.
This episode is called Fallout. Final airing was in the UK February 1st, 1968. Final airing in the United States was September 21st, 1968. Written and directed by Patrick McGoohan at the request of ITV, is my understanding correct? Because they'd already done the other episode, or they had that in the planning stages or whatever, and then he had to come up with this to tie everything up because they weren't getting the 13 episode pickup?
Right.
Okay. And that leads me to my theory about what this whole thing is about here. We'll talk about it as we go along here. Just a couple of things just to point out here. Our president, who's running the whole thing, as we'll get into it here, played by Kenneth Griffith, he had appeared as number 2 in The Girl Who Was Death.
Right. And it's weird that he's known as the president.
Yes.
Like, I don't get that at all. I mean, he's a judge.
Right.
He's dressed as a judge here.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. It's an odd title. Supposedly he wrote all his own stuff.
Wouldn't surprise me.
The stuff that he says. And you know what, you say the word theory or whatever. I do have a theory also of my own about what's going on too. Not to be outdone by you.
I will bet you my theory might surprise you, but we'll talk about it here. Another character also who has had multiple prisoner appearances is the delegate, also one of the members of the, as I'm calling them throughout the discussion here, the Assembly of People, played by Michael Mulligan. He appeared as number 93 in A Change of Mind, and also the man in the buggy in The General.
Okay.
So,
now, how many of these people were on Doctor Who?
You'll be surprised to know that we have no Doctor Who people here. Although I will pull a Doctor Who reference later on in the story.
I don't believe it. Somebody in this whole thing has. I bet you one of those guys in the background that we never see their face, or
I would
we're
be surprised.
Somewhere on Doctor Who.
Some of the stuntmen and such possibly there.
Why wasn't Alexis? Is it Cantner?
Yes.
Why wasn't he on Doctor Who? You know what I mean? That's so weird to me that guy was never on Doctor Who.
Well, with the way he was dressed, he could have been Doctor Who.
Totally, yeah. And of course, I want to throw in here he was on UFO.
Yes. Now, right off the bat, again, as with the other 3 pickup episodes that they did to finish out the 17-episode commitment, we get a different opening. We get a previously on The Prisoner.
Yeah.
Which is
weird.
Well, what's weird is because it really doesn't tell you anything about what really happened previously. You could have done it all in like 60 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds, instead of going through the motions of, as we discussed in the last episode, our, what kind of theater did we call this?
I kept saying
experimental theater. Experimental theater.
Wait, here's what I thought. It starts and we get the scenes from, previously on The Prisoner. I thought it actually made the previous episode kind of look good. Like I was thinking, wow, that was a cool episode. I wish I had seen that one. You know what it did? It excised all of the malarkey and really kind of made it look interesting and made you feel like if you'd missed it, it was something that not good to have missed.
Wow, really? Because I'm like thinking after everything we went through watching the last part, they actually make us sit through, and it also says something to the effect of how
make us sit through.
Well, no, because it also says something to the effect that this clearly there wasn't a story here either. There wasn't a plot because that previously went on for 4 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's padding.
Yes,
yeah, it's absolutely true. But the most important thing is that our beloved Port Mirren gets a credit.
Yes,
and a rather huge credit too.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's a really cool thing, or it's good for us here in 2021 to know that up until that moment, for the most part, to most everybody, it was still a mystery
Yes.
As to where that was and what was going, and as we talk throughout the recording of all these episodes, there's actually little clues here and there that things that said that. I think there was supposedly like some cups or saucers or whatever that were used in an episode that actually said they were from the Port Mirren, gift shop or something like that if you looked close enough.
My thing is, though, in seeing that was also adding a little bit of the bittersweetness there, because it's like this place was supposed to be a mystery throughout, and if you're revealing what it is, this has got to be the end.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
We're not getting any more there. And, of course, we didn't get any of the opening with the regular credits. We didn't get a Where Am I in the Village, because I guess technically we're no longer in the village of sorts.
That's a really interesting way to put it.
Right. Because we don't have, we have a number 2, but we don't have a number 2.
Right.
Either. So.
Right.
Nobody there to taunt him at the beginning and all. Is they're looking. And in fact, that's the other thing that gets me about all this. In the end, what has been for the last, all right, I won't say 16 episodes because we didn't even get that always, but for most of the episodes, what do you want? Information. And when we get to this last episode, there's no pressing him from this point on. He's being exalted as some wondrous man.
This goes into my theory. I've said it how many different times while we've done this podcast that I said the final episode, I really don't know if you can believe any of it. If the other episodes happened, or most of the other episodes, did this one, really happen, or what were we supposed to think of it? I want you to know that I tried to open my mind as wide as it can go while watching this. And as I sat there and shook my head many times in dismay and sometimes in disgust, I formed a theory, and it allowed me to come up with something that can allow this to sort of fit in with everything else, because it really doesn't. To me, it just takes everything and just throws it to the wind or throws it up against the wall. So I'm looking forward to hearing your theory on this too.
Okay. All right. Well, and I think you and I, Jim, were saying this also. Again, this is a pretty threadbare story in many respects. I look at it as it's actually broken into 3 parts. All right. The first is he's brought by the supervisor and the butler down below. They go down into this lower chamber area. And he's brought into a room where there's these racks of hangers and a mannequin of wearing his old clothes, not the village clothes, his old clothes.
Yeah. No, they want him to be as he was.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
We thought you would feel happier as yourself.
And he changes his clothes. He's led into this large cave area, and as he's walking towards it, we see this row of jukeboxes, and they're all playing the Beatles. All You Need Is Love.
The Beatles. and I love it because, as a huge Beatles fan myself, the moment those first few notes come out, it's not just the French national anthem, but I know that it's the French national anthem as played at the beginning of All You Need Is Love. Another thing that's cool to keep in mind is that would have been a more or less current song at that time.
Yep.
Roughly maybe only about a year old. It was released on July 7th, 1967. So I'm not, I don't know exactly when this was filmed. You said it was released in 68. Right?
It was released in February of 68, so less than a year later.
You know what? Yeah, it was less than a year. That would have been a new, big song, which is really kind of fascinating. I mean, you have to think of, I don't know. I mean, I don't follow current music, so you'd have to take something from one of the biggest musicians or recording artists going at this very moment and stick it at the beginning of a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that they were able to get the rights to do that.
For the show.
Yeah, for the show, that McGoohan was able to, and you know what? We didn't even mention that too. That McGoohan's rather prominent written and directed by credit.
Yes, written and directed by, but barely acted in.
Yeah, I know. For real. Well, and if anything, maybe overacted. He acts so freaking goofy, when he isn't just sitting there stony faced.
Right.
I'll say it now. I probably should say it at the end, but I'll say it now. I don't care what he said at the time or what he said afterwards. I think that this is more or less a total disregard by him for the show.
Yes. Yeah, that's my whole take on it. It's a who cares.
It is. It's also sort of I'm going to assume a kind of revenge, or
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not happy what was done to us.
Yes.
To the show.
Here's a screw you.
And I'm gonna do this, and it's me, I'm trying to think of the term, snubbing, everybody,
right.
Or
right.
Flicking my nose at everybody. Yeah, and it didn't deserve it, and
no.
And the fans didn't deserve it. As much as, and we talked about it last time, as much as I love McGoohan as an actor, I don't think he ever really did have any regard for any sort of fan base, that he might have had. It didn't seem to me the sort of thing that mattered to him as an actor, that it was the work, I guess, in a way. I would almost say that he's sort of like to use a comic book reference, he's sort of the Steve Ditko of actors. Where it didn't matter what people... It was the work itself. Like, it didn't matter about him. It was the work itself that should speak for itself. And not anything else. And he wasn't concerned about what people thought about it or anything like that at all. If anybody out there agrees with me, I would like to hear that.
I totally agree with you.
Steve Ditko practiced objectivism, I think it was called.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's not subjective, it's objective. It is what it is.
Yes.
And that's that.
But
so what he does is he gives us the most biggest bag of hooey. I kept saying hooey to you before we started recording. As much as the previous episode had all the little vignettes, and I kept saying, like, oh, it doesn't mean anything. But at least those vignettes, taken individually as things, actually the little scenes that they acted out made sense within themselves. There's virtually nothing in this that makes any sense. It's complete Dadaism, to use an art term. To me, little vignettes that, again, taken by themselves, mean something. At least we had like school scenes. We had a fencing scene. We had they were acting like they were in a jet fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Those things made sense. This was like literally like it would almost be like they were just ad-libbing all of this. I mean, written by Patrick McGoohan. I don't know what if anybody's ever seen the script to this thing, I would like to see what it is. How do you write something like this? I don't get it. But go on. Sorry.
Well, well, just to go back a quick second, then I want to pick up on what you're saying there. The whole thing with the Beatles too. You point out, getting the rights then. I'm thinking, what did it take to keep the rights now? Because we see a lot of shows like WKRP and The Greatest American Hero that lost a lot of music and had to release with, covers and garage band crap. This is impressive that the song is there in current 2021.
You're right. And it's still there. It's funny. I'm looking on Wikipedia and under the listing for All You Need Is Love, and it actually has it towards the end of the page for it. It says in popular culture, and it's the very first example of it. It says in February '68, the song was played in the Fallout episode of the TV series The Prisoner. It was a rare example of the Beatles licensing their music for use in another artist's film or television project.
Right.
That's very interesting. But yeah, I thought of that too. Like, wow, it's still in here.
Is their catalog still owned by Michael Jackson's estate?
No, I don't think that's correct anymore.
Okay. Because he was leasing it out like crazy left and right.
Right.
For that time he had it.
I do not know. And there's how many examples of music in this, or recordings. Of course, there's Dry Bones, which would be public domain, but there's like a Carmen Miranda recording and a couple other different things in this episode.
Mm-hmm. But just to also piggyback on what you were saying about his indifference. As I said, barely acted. I know you say there's moments there where he's hamming it up or overdoing it and stuff. But the fact is, if you really look at it from, the moment he steps into the thing to, the little exchange he has with the president, takes the seat, watches all the proceedings, and then when they make the break for it, he never speaks again. For the last 20 minutes, he doesn't talk. And that's the thing that gets me about this, is that I think he probably was like, I've been bringing these people through this journey for these episodes. ITV had given him the carte blanche to do this show the way he saw fit. And then they pull the rug out from under him and say, well, we're not going to do the second season. You need to wrap this up. And he probably felt, angry and such. And to me, the epitome of it all is, when he gets up, because basically, just to, and we can go back into, they do this sort of like trial scene because he's brought into the chamber. There's the jury box with all the people in the Greek tragedy masks, and they're sitting there with these placards in front of them reading things like welfare, pacifist, activist. In the midst is the throne. That's where he's told to sit since he's their savior. And then 48 is brought out, apparently alive, and he's put on trial for being, a rebel, the kind of youthful rebel that we see in society in that time. And then we bring out 2, who's brought back to life right before our eyes with a thing that reminded me of a Dalek. There's one of my 2 Doctor Who references here, as they sort of stick it on his face there. And then he's a rebel because he, doesn't go along with, I'm guessing because he wanted to do degree absolutes when the village had their own plans.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, it is what you're saying. And I wrote the word revolt down. There's a lot of talk about revolt, but yes, my whole theory, it hinges on, number one, it's a reflection, and I use that as, not as a pun. Number one, I use it's a reflection upon McGoohan's own feelings as to what's going on, but within the universe of the prisoner, I don't believe anything that the village officials are, if it can be said that these people are representing the village. I don't believe what they're doing is what it seems on the surface. I wrote a note to myself: is this one last gambit by them?
No.
Oh, you say no, it's not.
No.
Okay.
No.
I think it could be, or it's they know they're going to let him go. They know that it's all over with. And he's going to choose to go, but they're going to try to get their last shot in at him in a way to get revenge. in and I think that mirrors McGoohan. McGoohan's got his last shot in, and he's going to get his revenge by delivering, a piece of hooey on everybody. And that's, to me, sort of what the Village is doing. They're going to, Six is going to go free, but they're gonna extract a pound of flesh before they let him go. They're going to try to drive him a bit crazy again. They're going to make it very difficult for him again. But yes, he is going to be let go. And whether or not it works or not, is up to the viewer. And believe me, but after saying all of that, I know that I'm really, really, really trying to make something out of virtually nothing.
Yeah, I know you're trying to find me, because to me, I'm kind of like, there is no meaning to me, because again, okay, we've got our two rebels first, but they're rebels. One is rebel without a clue, 48. He's a kid, and there's always time for him. Two is the unappreciative. We took you in, we made you, and then you rebelled. Whereas in the end, and this is why they're letting him go, the prisoner has always been the rebel. He's always stuck true to himself. He is pure, and they have to respect that. Now,
ugh. I'm sorry.
You don't like that.
It would be hard for me I'd be dragged to it kicking and screaming, because after everything we've seen throughout the show, that to believe that their respect for him and their obsequious behavior toward him, it could be true. That, to me, that would be like a tiger can't change its stripes or whatever. It would be hard to believe that they could turn around that much, because what did he really do? I guess he makes it through the whole show. That's what it is. Did they ever do that with anybody else? Is he the only? Is that they're doing all this fuss because he's the only one? It's hard to believe that these people, represented by the so-called president, have been there this entire time and been behind all of it. It's just, the tone is so off to me.
Yes. Absolutely. And it's on purpose. It's on purpose, because you're doing this because you're doing exactly what all the other fans did. The ones who then camped out at his house. He had to go into hiding because he didn't want to explain this. You're looking to what happened in the past for meaning. This episode has nothing to do. He's using the trappings of the Village and what have you here to tell his little play of how he got effed over by, and I'm telling you, this is the way I see it. He got effed over by ITV.
Yeah.
And because what happens? You're pure. You're the rebel. We can't beat you. So we're going to let you go. We're going to give you everything you need, and we're going to let you go. And would you like to say a few words before you leave? And what does he do? He gets up there on that podium.
I feel the revelation of the power of the last. I feel that this white cape has taken Christendom.
On behalf of us all, we thank you.
What is that assembly? That's ITV going, shut your mouth and give us a story. I, and they all start chanting. And I just look at it as, I had no choice. This is what you're getting, gang, because ITV didn't play fair with me. I don't look at this as any sort of, because in the end also, what the hell is the deal with number one? We finally get to see number one or somebody dressed as number one. He pulls the mask and it's an ape mask, and then he pulls the mask and it's him.
I want to be clear on this. I agree with you. What your theory is concerns how this episode came about and why we're getting what we're getting. Whereas I do agree with all of that, and I see that. What I was trying to do was, the fan in me was trying to make sense of it universe.
Nope. I give up. Because I'm going to put it, you said it yourself at the end of the last episode, and you said you were going to go in with an open mind. You said, as far as you were concerned, the last episode should have been the last episode and not this one. And something, you're absolutely right. This is only an interesting exercise on how to screw. I mean, this is the ultimate screw you. We've seen producers, writers, directors go out on their shows sometimes and they get a little bit of this is the ultimate F you.
Yeah, because probably no one ever was given, carte blanche.
Right.
This.
And he's been given carte blanche here. Our prisoner is given carte blanche in the story.
Here's something interesting about this. Is just fun. It doesn't mean anything. This is just a fun little exercise. When we see number one, or what we're told is number one, I don't believe it's number one.
Oh, I don't either. No.
It's, again, if it goes into, if anybody out there wants to believe my thing about the villages screwing with him again and trying to extract a pound of flesh, this is just one last thing to just as number two spits in the eye, the electronic eye of number one. This is the show spitting in our eyes. I think it's funny that there's a mirroring of McGoohan's flipping out when he's trying to talk at the end, and the whole jury or whatever you want to call them are yelling over him, and he starts getting flipping out. Compare that to the way he looks when the mask is taken away as number one. I think that there's a similarity there too. Wait, I'm saying this out loud now after thinking about it earlier while I was watching it. Now I realize how stupid it sounds, but
he promised us a number one. Well, he didn't promise, but the part of the premise of the show was who is number one. Well, I gave you number one.
Right. We talked.
It is what it is.
It is one of those things where nothing would have satisfied. You can't show number one.
Right.
There's nothing that would satisfy anybody at all out there. It's one of those impossible things to answer. And there's been how many things like that in pop culture over the years. You don't set it up, and you're able to deliver on it. I know there's been many theories about it. Why does it look like him? And it cannot be taken literally. It's not like number 6's long lost twin brother, or something, like that. I know people have said things like it's a symbol of him being a prisoner of himself. Like he's a prisoner in his own mind.
Yeah.
Or that he did once accept the studio system when he started out on this show, or with Danger Man and Secret Agent, and that's a symbol of that. But he's no longer that person anymore. I'm laughing also because the whole thing at the end is just the set from The Girl Who Was Death. It's the lighthouse.
Yeah.
The inside of the lighthouse set.
It is.
And then, of course, it turns out to be a rocket, just like that was a rocket.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, before we started recording, you mentioned the Dean Motter comic book.
Yes.
Limited series. And that's all about that underneath the village there was missiles stored. Mm-hmm. That's part of the ending of that, if I remember correctly. So it's funny how they picked up on that. Let me ask you something. Is there any sense of victory that you get from four of them walking away at the end?
Ankle bone, your ankle bone connected to you. Leg bone, your leg bone connected to you. Knee bone, your knee bone connected to you. Thigh bone, your thigh bone connected to you. Hip bone, your hip bone connected to you. Backbone, your backbone connected to you. Shoulder bone, your shoulder bone connected to you. Neck bone, your neck bone connected to you. Head bone, now hear the word of the Lord. Them bones gonna walk around. Them bones gonna walk around. Them bones gonna walk around. Now hear the word of the Lord.
Or by that point, are you just like, I just need this thing to be over with?
I don't have it.
I mean,
no.
Do you get a little sense of happiness at all that these people get to walk away?
No.
Okay.
Not them. I have a sense of happiness that McGoohan went out. Since they wouldn't let him do it one way, he did it another, and he went out on his terms. Because, like I said, those last 20 minutes when first they attack everybody, they manage to get the guns. He frees 48 and 2,
yeah.
And with the butler as well chiming in and helping.
You know what? It's funny. There is for a little tiny bit, I actually kind of like all of that because you know what it is? It's the James Bond finish.
Oh sure, absolutely.
Well, for a moment there, like everything that's going on is you know what's going on. Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool. Although it's funny when he calls the guards into the room and then they attack the guards. What's funny is they attack the guards. You see other people in those robes helping Six, and for a moment I don't know who the hell those people are, and then you see that it's 48 and 2.
Yes.
Because you don't see them get out of their tubes that
right.
For some screwball reason say the word orbit on them. And I don't know if that's supposed to mean anything, why the hell it says orbit. I don't get that at all. Or maybe they were going to be shot into orbit or something like that. I presume that thing that we saw as number 1 is still in the rocket when it takes off.
I would assume that, yeah.
I would assume all he did was go another level higher or something. But in a way, I think that's kind of cool. It's like, wow, number 2's with him, number 48's with him, and of all things, the butler's with him, and they all have the guns and start. I actually like that sequence because now suddenly it's back to something I recognize. Like I'm grasping for something to recognize.
Well, something you recognize in normal setting. There've been no guns in the village.
Right.
In fact, those guards you mention are the same guards. What was it? The girl who was death, or was it? Do not forsake me. Because remember you said, where do those guards come from? This is it. I mean, they were probably created for these final episodes.
It is. It's do not forsake me.
There you go.
Oh my darling, because I said that wow, there was never anybody like that there. It's also interesting that Six is using a gun.
Yes.
And shooting everybody. But anyways, I mean, just as a big James Bond finish where our heroes have machine guns and are running through the villain's lair and shooting all the guards as they make their escape.
Sure. As they make their escape from the rocket, because he's primed the rocket to launch, which also then forces the evacuation of the village, because apparently this is some terrible thing.
Yeah. You know, evacuate. And I'm presuming all those shots were from other episodes.
I would think so too.
Yeah, that's all like stock footage. But it's interesting that they're evacuating the village, and my question is, why are they evacuating the village?
Yeah.
Because the rocket doesn't seem to destroy anything when it lifts off.
No.
Although it should have, if it was real, it would have, blown up the whole place. But that was interesting that they had to evacuate the village. And then they're driving away in the truck. That cage room from the previous episode is a truck, and you said that in our last recording. And then we find out that they're in England this whole time.
Are they in England this whole time, or did they somehow make it to England? Because that was the thing. I'm like, we know where the village is. We've had that established.
No. I think there's no idea or shown of it passage of time. Wait, in 1967, 68, what was there? Was there the channel? Or no, there wasn't a channel at that point.
Nope.
No. How the hell did you get from the continent to England in a vehicle?
Ferry?
On a boat.
A ferry boat,
A ferry. There's no way that big truck was put on a ferry and they came all the way over. No. Wait, it's hard to believe because it's BS is what it is. We know damn well that it's not in England. The number 6 knows where it is, according to whatever the hell that episode was that we talked about a million years ago.
That was Many Happy Returns.
That Many Happy Returns, where he gets away and they plot out where it is and they go searching for it. And, it's in Europe somewhere. It's on the continent, it's whatever. It's in Belgium or wherever the hell it is. No. Because all of a sudden they're only driving a little bit and they see a sign that says it's like 20 kilometers to London. Okay, here's a big question. What the hell is that with Rover at the end?
I was going to ask you about that. What did you think of that whole thing with Rover just kind of like shrinking?
That's a big poke in the eye, with a pointed stick.
Yep. To Carmen Miranda, I think the song is called "I Like You Very Much."
I like you very much. I think you're great. Why is it that when I feel a touch, my heart stops a little bit? I like you to hold me tight. You are too divine. If you want to be in someone's arms tonight, just be sure the arms are mine.
It's called I.
Really?
I like you very much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's literally I, parentheses, I like you very much.
Jeez.
It's funny because Wikipedia says that Rover deflates and is destroyed upon exposure to the flames of the rocket's exhaust. So that's very interesting. Remember back when I said maybe Rover is number 1.
So maybe number 1 is killed in all this?
If there ever was a number 1, maybe maybe it was just an idea that they had in the beginning and then began to believe it, that they're acting like there's a number. That would have been interesting, that there is no number 1, that it was a sort of a mass hallucination by these people, whoever the hell they are. I get a kick out of, again, that the butler is there that whole time. That's really nice that Angelo got that much to do, and quite a lot actually. Yep. And he gets to run around shooting people and helping him escape and driving the truck, and then it just gets more and more infuriating. The stupid comedic scene with them driving along on the Queen's Highway, if that's what it is. And then that guy,
Dry
guy
bones?
passes by in the car, and he looks over, and they're all just kind of like dancing. And to see McGoohan like dancing around in there and then the others is just dumb, just stupid and infuriating. And I mean, again, there's a tiny little bit of satisfaction to see them that they get to go and no one's bothering. No one is stopping them from going. It's weird though. Number 2 walks away, and then all of a sudden he's seen in a real nice suit, and
Yes.
he goes into the palace.
Yeah. Now, is that the palace, or is that, no, that's not Buckingham Palace.
Oh, what's funny is it's the Palace of Westminster.
Okay,
Sorry.
there you go.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And it says he enters by the Peers entrance, whatever the hell that is. And I know we'll get angry emails from the British fans of our show here. And then what the hell is the whole thing with the Bobby walking up, and then that big huge conversation with number 6 and number 6's animated reply.
Right.
Like,
Well, animated is it's all mind. There's no dialogue.
Well, that's only because we're too far away to hear it, I think. But
You could have done, this is what I mean. He did this, begrudgingly. He wasn't, and so he put his little, because it's interesting because the episode before, like it or not, he was acting in it. There was something going on, and there was an interesting dynamic with him and 2, even if the vignettes were like all over the place. But still, there was something to it. This one, he showed up. He even doesn't have to wear the silly village costume anymore. He's wearing normal clothes. He's himself again.
Yeah. Well, it's a complete circle. We come right back to the beginning. The car, his flat, the hearse even drives by.
The hearse drives by, and what happens when the butler goes into the house?
Yeah, it's the door sound.
Yep.
So I take that to mean that the butler is now his butler, and that he is number 2.
Is he?
That's what I take it to mean. He is number 2, or he is number 1.
Because what's his house number?
What was it?
1.
It said 1. Yeah, he is. Yeah. Well, he told us already. He's number 1.
Mm-hmm.
He's number 1. He's number 1. He's number 1. Huh. And then he drives off, and we don't even get a new shot. We get the same, the shot from the beginning of the show.
Yep.
And the thunder claps and all of that, and that's it.
Cut to credits. Now there was though one other little thing though, and see this goes again to my whole, how he feels against ITV and the way they handled all this. Because as each person, 48 goes off, he's thumbing the ride, like you said. Number 2 winds up, going into the palace there. But as each one is doing it, what do we get? Name, Angelo Muscat, and then when they show him, prisoner.
Right, I guess he's saying, that's what he is at the end. Yeah, that was interesting. Not the prisoner even, but just prisoner.
Yep.
It's nice that they gave those guys credit at the end.
Well, he gave them credit.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Alexis is held up so highly. Like Angelo totally deserved that at the end. Mm-hmm. I think he's the only actor other than McGoohan that's in every episode, right?
Pretty much.
I don't think. Well, he might not be in Living in Harmony. Yeah, I'm not even sure anymore.
No, I don't think he is. You're right.
Maybe he's the second actor, that to be in the most episodes. But he totally deserves that, and I would say Leo McKern, deserves that. He's, he's the number 2 at the beginning and number 2 at the end. Alexis, it's weird because he's only in one, he's in one other episode. I don't know. It's just interesting that he gets as much credit as the others in that. I have a feeling that maybe McGoohan thought that he himself gets a big credit at the beginning, writing and directing, and I think that might be part of it.
You're being nice again. You're trying to.
Okay.
Trying. I'm like that. That's a screw you. And by the way, Angelo, 14 episodes out of the 17.
Oh, okay, cool. Wow, great, great. I've done a lot of different things where I've been accused of not liking what I'm doing. Like, we got that with Green Hornet when we did the Green Hornet podcast, and there are these books that I was once involved in where I was told that me and my contributors were not fans of the thing that we were talking about. And I'm starting to feel like I'm putting that across here, and that's not true. The Prisoner is one of my most favorite shows. It's just that it doesn't deserve this ending. And the weird, surreal thing is that the person responsible for this stupid ending is our hero.
Yeah.
One of my favorite actors. And that's hard to take. And I guess a lot of people would stand by him and say he totally deserved to be able to, to do this. I don't know if I totally agree with that. I mean, in some ways it's shooting yourself in the foot. He had to put up with the fallout, if you'll pardon the pun. He had to deal with the fallout, if that's true, that people camped out angry people camped out at his home and all of that. And for years later, to be asked what the hell that was, or probably derided for what the hell that was. But again, he didn't seem like a guy that really gave a damn, what people thought of that thing. So I guess in some ways that's what McGoohan was an iconoclast.
Yeah.
I wish there was a little bit more to be taken away from this. Nice set. There, I'll say that. Yeah, interesting set. I love the corridor. Hey, I read that there was like a deleted scene, and you can see the very beginning of it when they're coming in that jukebox corridor. There supposedly was a deleted scene that showed frogmen on motorbikes, and you can see them right. There's a quick shot of them behind McGoohan and the control guy
when they're doing the evacuation.
You do see them ride by, but supposedly when they're first coming in, there was much more of them riding down the corridor on motorbikes. I don't really care one way or the other, because that's just another one of those, let's do something just because it's silly and doesn't mean anything,
right.
and or weird. People will ask what the hell that means.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. You know what? Maybe he could have trotted in more elements from the show. Maybe they could have made that like a trial at the end, and he could have brought in some of the female characters. I would have rather seen some sort of follow-up to them. How many different of the female characters did I say, oh, you know what, she was very interesting, whatever. Where is Nadia, The one lady that I really liked, the blonde, from how many episodes back?
From the girl who was deaf?
Yeah, her, and no, the one that was back a few. That it was actually a good episode. Crap.
You're talking about the one where he got lobotomized?
Yeah, the one that she does the lobotomy, or
okay.
Yes. Yeah. All the different number twos that we liked all along the way. They could have done a clip show, and I might have been happier.
Well, you know what? That would have been an easy out for him. As a screw you, would have been to do to do that.
But
he got the go ahead. He got whatever little extra money, so he just went F it. I'm telling you, that's the way it felt as I watched this whole thing.
John, I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
it's sad that he felt a need to be that vindictive. Instead of he could have phoned it in the sense of, just doing a clip show and a little this and that and then out. Mm-hmm. And that would have been thumbing his nose too. But he actually went, full blown vindictive.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make and I use the term loosely, story about how I feel about what was done to me in this show. So there you have it. The end of The Prisoner.
The end of The Prisoner. Boom. And the credits roll for the last time. Mm-hmm. By the way, one little thing I forgot to note also, another Doctor Who bit, I thought it just caught my attention at the very end when he and the butler are running through the streets. They're holding hands as they're trying to get to the bus. And for some reason, I just thought of Christopher Eccleston's Doctor in the very first episode when the show came back in 2005, and at one point he grabs Rose by the hand and they run through the streets and we see a bus nearby. So
it's just tradition.
I don't know. It's just so tradition. And of course he's dragging Angelo Muscat's kind of falling behind a little bit there.
That's what I was thinking of. It's like, wait, poor Angelo. It's like, stop dragging him along. He can't run as fast as you Mr. 7 foot tall McGoohan, whatever the hell he was, and little like 3.5 foot tall Angelo. Yep. Like, damn, stop doing that to the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I gotta say again how cool Angelo was. It would have would have been really cool if he would have gotten to speak at the end.
Yeah.
If at the very end, Six is getting in the car and Angelo's walks up the steps, wouldn't it have been something if he would have turned and done the 6 sign and say, "Be seeing you"?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that, sir? Be seeing you, sir.
Yeah.
That would have been the ultimate best. I could have almost maybe forgiven this episode if it would have ended like that. Am I right?
Yeah, no, I'll give you that if they'd given him a line. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I forgot, Angelo was in Doctor Who. So there's your Doctor Who reference.
Oh, okay, see?
Because I mentioned that ages ago when we first started this in Arrival, so.
Remind me, what was he in? What episode?
He was in actually First Doctor, all the way back to William Hartnell, Galaxy 5. He played one of the robots. He was inside one of the robots, Chumbly.
Oh, yes. Oh, wow. So he didn't have any. It wasn't a speaking part or anything.
Probably the line. If they, I forget because it's one of those missing episodes. So I've seen a reconstruction of it, but it's been years since I've seen it.
Oh.
If there were lines, usually those were done by voice actors off screen.
Okay. And you couldn't see his face.
No, not in this costume. No. Okay. He's a Chumbly operator.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, that's cool though that there's our Doctor Who connection. I'm relieved now that there's a Doctor Who connection.
Oh man.
Okay.
Well, all right, Jim. Just we don't get to do this every episode, but if folks want to get a hold of your writings, or if they want to talk to you some more on and I know you're over in the Prisoner group as well here on Facebook, and
if they want to get a hold of me to like bring my neck.
What's the best way?
I swear to God, I'm a Prisoner fan. I really, really am.
But you know what? Here's the thing, Jim. And there's. The diehard fans, because I get this all the time too. I have the Batcave podcast. We've done episodes where I've had people say, "You don't know what you're talking about. Batman is gold and everything is beautiful." $6 Million Man. We're going through the 4th season right now. There are just episodes that are painstakingly dumb. We're going to be doing in a couple of weeks the Flip Wilson episode. There's a man named Thomas DJ. Thomas does various podcasts, but his most famous one that I loved for years was Better in the Dark. And he has this thing. He says, it's okay to love your story, love your characters, be really into it. It is not okay to love your story and love you have to see the flaws. You can't look at, and the fact is, as much as this is a beautiful thing, and I will watch this show again and I will appreciate, and I'll even watch Living in Harmony. I'll even watch Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, because that's the kind of completist I am. But this show had its flaws and it had its problems, and it had its, and depending on how you approach a show, whether you're the kind of person who can live in the moment and appreciate an episode, or if you're like me, and that's what I was doing through this thing. I do have this thing about continuity. I like when I get invested, I want there to be some sort of going through narrative. Maybe it's because, this is what we're all programmed with now in 2021, where everything has to have a story arc that goes through your series, even if you have individual episodes.
Yep. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. It should be, warts and all, as the saying goes.
Right.
I don't believe in loving something unconditionally.
Right.
A person, yes, I don't go along with that. But Batman 66, there's the example. I danced around a little bit, but there's the example. My most favorite TV show of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can point out the flaws, as well as the good parts. When The Prisoner is good, it can be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's bad, it can be really bad. I don't believe if you were going to tell somebody about The Prisoner, I would never suggest, okay, watch this episode, and this episode, and that's it.
Right.
No. You know what? For one thing, it's a short show. You watch it in its entirety. You take it as it is, warts and all.
Yep.
You watch it from beginning to end. Don't jump around through it. I suppose if you've seen it a million times, you can do that, but honestly, somebody coming into it, just watch it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Despite what we say about this ending, it is part of it. It is the last episode. There's nothing that we can do to change it. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the mystique of the show. It's part of the legend. It's you can't excise it.
Mm-hmm.
It is there. It was at that moment in time important for McGoohan to do that.
Yes.
And therefore you should watch it and like us try to understand what in the hell was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also usually one of those episodes like when you see, The Prisoner is back, like a network is going to run the show or something, and they put together a promo. They'll grab a lot of scenes from this particular and the last episode because they're just so off the wall bonkers.
Yeah, I'll say it one more time. I watched The Prisoner for the first time in. I'm going to have to really try to guess around 1970, 71, 72, right around in there somewhere. I was really young. It was maybe the first syndication of it. There's a lot of shows like that I saw, like a lot of late 60s shows, I saw the very first syndication of it. Mm-hmm. That I was alive, but I wasn't old enough to have watched it first run, or if I did, I don't remember it. But this episode is what I walked away with, and to this very day is still my memories from back then, is Alexis Kantner singing Dry Bones.
Right.
With that top hat on. and
shirt.
the weird creepy feeling that I carried with me for years well, imagine a 5 or 6 year old child watching that episode.
Yeah.
And it not looking like anything else. It not looking like an episode of Batman. It not looking like an episode of Adam 12. I'm trying to think of things that that I watched back then. It not looking, like I don't know, an episode of the Flip Wilson Show, and being totally weirded out, and then going on, and then I didn't see it for many years because, as we all know of our age, if it wasn't on being shown by somebody on TV, you didn't get to watch stuff like this, and until finally it was put on VHS or later DVD. and wondering, like, what was that? What was that one weird show where they're underground and there were people like tied up and singing Dry Bones and making weird faces and stuff? You know, my dad made me watch The Prisoner. And that's what I walked away with mostly, was that episode. Like, not much else made an impression. Or if there was, it was just generalized things, like that there's a village. Rover. I remember Rover very well. Very, very well. And he was scary. It was scary. Really scary. You know? I mean, I guess if you think about it, it could have been a very scary show for a very young child to watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to hear from other people. By the way, if I was born in '65, so if there's people out there, that were at the either you watched it first run or first syndication, and you were like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old maybe, and you saw it and you felt like it was scary and you didn't get it or whatever, and then you carried those memories with you. I'd love to hear from you. I don't want to feel like I was alone in that.
Yeah, well, see, I come at it from the other end because I didn't see it till I was 18 in 1986. In fact, that's when it all, like the whole British, up until that point, it had been Benny Hill and Monty Python. That's when I really got exposed to British television because the one of the public broadcast stations, Channel 31, WNYC. So it was Doctor Who, Blake 7, The Prisoner. EastEnders. I was watching the EastEnders soap opera because they bought a ton of British programming and ran it. Because we also had Channel 13 here, the big public broadcasting station. So there was no need to piggyback and copy what they were doing. So they went and kind of struck their own thing and did their own programming. Yeah. So it was really interesting.
I mentioned it before that I lived only an hour's drive away from Canada. So we got Canadian television. It was Channel 9. And it actually came in, really well. I don't know. We had, back then we had UHF. And we had to tune it in. And we had stations from Detroit, Michigan that were hard to tune in. Channel 50 came in great. It was channel like 20 that was so hard to tune in. But for some reason, Channel 9 came in beautifully. And my dad watched a lot of Canadian television. Don't ask me why. And it was almost all British shows. That's how I saw all these different things. That's how I watched The Beachcombers, Space 1999, The Bearcats, Prisoner. I believe it was that was what was on Channel 9. The Tom Jones variety show, the Irish Rovers variety show. All this stuff, all this British television I was exposed to. And then my brother, my older brother, he's 4 years older than me, he got onto Monty Python. And I can't remember what station he was watching Monty Python on. I saw Monty Python like way early on. It had to have been still fairly new at that point, maybe first syndication. So I was exposed to some, raw humor, people, yelling out bloody hell, oh, you bloody bastard, or whatever, and I credit that with, that's why I love British humor, to this day, is because of Monty Python. I didn't like Benny Hill. I would never be mistaken for a Benny Hill fan. You know why? Benny Hill is, and not to get too far off the subject, Benny Hill is vaudeville. And I don't care for like that. It's kind of almost all sex humor.
Well, yeah, it is. It's a lot of sex humor. Yeah.
And,
But I was just the right age. I was already into Julie Newmar. And so,
I get it. Okay. I get it. I don't know. I can only take so many times of speeding up the film and running after buxom women to the tune of yakety sax. I can only take so much. I liked Monty Python because and I'm sorry, Benny Hill fans, it's intelligent humor. For the most part, it was intelligent humor. I mean, to have jokes about poets, and writers and artists and all that. Yeah, and you know what? There's some really dumb, stupid sex humor in Monty Python. I get that totally, but I think I credit that with that's how I understand British humor. And there is a lot of people who just don't get in the States who just don't get British humor.
Yeah, no, absolutely they don't.
But I don't get the British humor of Fallout though.
Not much. There's not much there to laugh at. It's just it's a shame. It is, as McGoohan himself. It is what it is, and it's what you get out of it and what you take away. Yeah. My takeaway is it's a big, thumbing his nose at ITV. That's what it was.
It's the Lazarus episode. It's the Star Trek Lazarus episode.
Oh, see, no, because those are fighting words. Because I will go to my death saying the Lazarus episode is not as bad as everybody makes it out to be.
Oh my God, to me it's the worst. Okay,
oh no,
that's a whole other thing. It's the worst. It's you know what? Spock's brain is and Spock's brain gets a bad rap.
It does get a bad rap. I agree with that, but there are plenty of third season episodes that are worse than that one.
The thing about the Lazarus episode, unlike Fallout, and to connect it with The Prisoner, unlike Fallout is totally on purpose.
Yeah.
The Lazarus episode is bad because it's just a mishmash of effing around with it. It wasn't anything of what it was supposed to be. It's kind of cobbled together. They didn't get the star that they wanted, and I think there was too many hands in fiddling around with the script, afterwards and rewrites until it's just one big freaking stupid, silly mess.
So Fallout could have used a few more hands.
I totally agree. And how he went that long without anybody knowing what he was doing.
Well, yeah, that's the impressive thing.
And then he hands it in, and they put it on. I guess maybe they were struck for time. Maybe he handed in at the very last second, and there was no time because. It's interesting. Why didn't the studio go in and say and try to re-edit it or film something else to make it, more palatable?
At that point, it's the last episode. They're not going it. What do they care? As long as he's not being offensive to anybody, who cares?
No, I get it. And they probably said, when people called the BBC or whoever, they probably said, "Oh, talk to Patrick McGoohan."
Yeah,
we didn't have anything to do with it. It was just filmed here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ITV.
Yeah, he used our money, but that was it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Lazarus I was going to say it's the Nora Clavicle of.
Oh jeez, no, even it's still better than. I'm sorry, no. Someday, I'm going to get on a Star Trek podcast, and I'll tell you right now, anybody there who's got a Star Trek podcast knows anybody, I will go on and I will defend this episode.
Hey,
vigorously.
Here's a new podcast idea. Seriously, here's a new podcast idea, and I'm serious about this.
Okay.
The worst episodes of famous shows. Or what is considered to be the worst episodes. Talk about the bottom of the barrel and have people on who support what's considered to be the worst
you'd have to
episode.
Because to sit there and bemoan the episode.
No, I think that would be really cool. Is that you have the the one person who likes it and the one person who doesn't, then they just sit and argue about it.
And get somebody in for Fallout who likes it.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay, I was thinking about that while I was watching it. I was actually going to go online and say, who out there likes Fallout? And you have to be totally honest. Who loves Fallout? Whatever. I want to know.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that right now. I know we get very little response to this thing, but I want to know. I want to hear from you if you really like Fallout. Like it couldn't be any other way. It had to be this way, and it's really good. And you're the champion of Fallout. I want to hear from you, and I'm not gonna call you an idiot or anything like that at all. I just want to know that there are people like that out there.
Okay.
And if your name is not John S. Drew and you like the Lazarus episode of whatever the hell, what is the Lazarus episode called?
It's called the no, wait a minute. I was about to say the immunity syndrome. It's not called. It's the alternative factor.
That's it. Yeah, the alternative factor. I keep calling it. I hate it so much. I call it the Lazarus episode because that's all I can remember from it.
Oh.
And if you like the Nora Clavicle episode of Batman. I'm trying to think of, many other different, things. If you like the hippies episode of Lost in Space,
or the Great Vegetable Rebellion.
Or the Vegetable Rebellion. Well, you know what? I'm the only person who likes the Go-Go Dancers hippie episode of Lost in Space. I love that one.
Oh, boy.
Hey. To see my childhood crush Penny Robinson dancing.
Oh, see, okay, so there you go,
go dancing,
Mr. I don't like Benny Hill, but he's there fantasizing about.
You can't compare that to Benny Hill. All right, prisoner.
Well, that's it. That's it.
It's done.
It's done. Put a pin in it. The rocket is launched. The door is closed, and the final boom.
Bum.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
But Jim, thank you very much for doing this with me.
We're totally done now, right?
Was there anything else? Right. Yes. I just wanted to say thank you though for going through these 17 episodes.
Yeah, no, and I say this in all honesty, my pleasure. I am really, really honored to be able to do this one. I mean, you could have had anybody do this one, but this show is, and I've said it before, this show is near and dear to my heart for many different reasons, from my childhood, and because of two people who two close family members that are big fans. Right. That's why also it means a lot to me.
Right. And make sure you're checking me and Jim out over at the Batcave Podcast, because if you like what we're doing here, we're talking Batman 1943. We're wrapping that up, and Jim and I are going to be settling down soon to start talking about Batman 1949, the movie serials from Columbia Pictures.
Oh, and there was an original question of where to find me. You can find me on Amazon. Just put in my name under books. And on Facebook at The Beard, the Jim Beard fan club, fan page. And then on Twitter, it's at Writer Jim Beard.
There you go. Very nice. And folks, make sure, let us know what you're thinking as well. At thechronicrift not at thechronicrift, thechronicrift at gmail.com, or comment here, or if you're listening via the Facebook Chronic Rift page or the Prisoner group, comment right there. We'll see the comments. So until then, folks, thank you so much for listening. Jim, once again, be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
On Sunday, February the 4th, 1968, several million viewers in the United Kingdom tuned in to watch this grand finale of Patrick McGoohan's mystifying television series. What they eagerly expected to see was a final narrative solution to wrap the series up and provide some answers to its puzzling storyline. Well, as we've just witnessed, what they actually saw was something else entirely. Angered fans looking for some kind of James Bond swamped the ITC switchboard with calls and literally stormed the offices in protest the following day. McGoohan wisely left for a vacation in Ireland until the heat was off. As a finale to the series, this episode provided less answers than it did allegory, symbology, and striking imagery. A fitting capstone to an allegorical, symbolic, and visually stunning series. The last point I guess I'd like to make is that it's not really important what we've said here tonight. It's not really important what any of us said, especially me. What's important in watching this series is what you think about it and what you do with what you think about it. This is a great opportunity to learn what it's like to be an individual and how to deal with that individuality in society, something we rarely see on broadcast television, and something that deserves a place on public TV. So, thank you and good night. Until next time, we'll be seeing you.